So we were in a situation where like money was not really being saved as much as we could have or wanted to.
Right.
So that just added to the discouraging factor of not wanting to buy a house right now. So when we sat down with you and I told you straight up, like there's not a lot of money. Not a lot of money. Our credit is this. And I remember you saying like, no, there's a way. Like, there's a way. And then like I think it was like maybe 6-7 months later we were closing and stuff like that. Welcome back to the Paso Robles Podcast, the podcast of Paso Robles, the podcast of the people.
That's right.
That's the only way I can. I think I'm just gonna this is the people's podcast. So hopefully it'll grow to. You say it enough, it's gonna happen, right?
Right.
So today I do have a special guest. She's not only a realtor, she's a friend, and she's our realtor. She is pretty much a realtor guru because she has a lot of answers. And if she doesn't have it, she'll find it for you. So without me over-explaining too much on who she is and how great she is, I'm going to let her introduce herself. So, Elizabeth.
And I can be your realtor too.
And she can be your realtor too. So yeah, tell us, you can look at the camera, you can let me, we can just chat.
Thank you, Miguel, for inviting me to your podcast. I feel honored. And my name is Elizabeth Gutierrez. I'm your local realtor here in the Central Coast. And I will have the opportunity to help each and every one of you obtain your goal of homeownership.
Pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
Pretty straightforward.
Very formal.
So I'll try to start with like questions, and it doesn't all have to be about realtor.
Right.
It can be about life. It can be about your kids. It can be about your new house. And it can be your car problems. I don't know. But we'll start simple as this. How is the market right now?
The market right now, that's a great question. Well, it's all over the place. Right now, the rates are starting to drop a little bit, so we're starting to see a little bit more people interested in buying. There's properties sitting in the market a little bit longer, but not as long as they were a few months ago. So I say right now is a great time for you to buy or sell. It's always the right time.
That's what I was about to say. Cause I'm pretty sure when we were buying, you said it was the right time. And I'm guessing the same thing would have happened if the year before that. So obviously it's an investment, right? It's an investment to, because you put it in a really good way. It's like, why pay the same amount in rent and it just goes, that money doesn't go to you or doesn't come back or anything.
Right. You're paying 100% interest when you're renting versus, right now, even if it's at 8%, worst case scenario, which was a few months ago, I mean, it's still better than 100%.
Right. Isn't
it
like 3, 4? No, isn't it like 5?
When, right now?
Yeah.
Well, right now it's around in the 6s, depending on the scenario and how much money. Because real estate, actually, the mortgage industry is a little bit different. So it's not just the rate itself. It depends on the programs. It depends on your assets, credit score. I mean, there's a lot of factors that come into place, not just the rate. That they quote out there.
So the depending on like the package or the deal that you're trying to get at, for your demographic, what would you lean on more? Because I know we did a USDA with down payment assistance, which
actually, is like USDA is just a one loan, 100% financing. The down payment assistance is the CalHAFA and CalFHA, GSFA. I mean, there's other programs with down payment assistance that instead of you physically coming with that 3.5% down, they give you that money as a down payment. And sometimes, there's no rates involved, like 0 interest on that portion of it, or sometimes it's 1%, depending on the program. Yeah,
because when I moved back to Paso in 2016, and I briefly looked at potentially buying a house, but I was single. I didn't have any big plans.
Right.
And that was the only thing I remember hearing is 3.5.
Yeah.
If you check with your bank.
Right.
Right. But I know in your podcast you've had mortgage brokers who can
do other programs.
Yeah.
So the difference between a broker and a bank is that the broker actually gets the opportunity to shop around for best pricing, best program, depending on the circumstances of the individual. As for the bank, it's a little bit more corporate. So if you're not that piece of puzzle to fit in, they're a whole picture, then they'll tell you don't qualify, or they go buy the regular loans because they have to move their money constantly. They don't want to have their money tied up, so they don't want to offer all these down payment assistance programs when they don't need to.
Right.
If that makes any sense.
Yes, sort of. So I guess let's say I'm a first-time home buyer, right? How much money should they have comfortably, percentage-wise, according debt to income ratio? Because obviously a lot of people go in it knowing the very basic stuff. 3.5 down through a bank, right? And that 3.5 down of 100,000 just to make it easy is what, 35,000.
It's no
3,500.
Yeah, 3,500.
So just if 500, you're timesing that by 5, so you're looking at like what, 18,000, something like that.
It's 2,150.
2,150. You're better at math than I am.
So 7,000 is for 200, 14,000 is for 400, and so on.
Yeah.
And actually, you're right. I think it's 14. Yeah, 17.5. Here I am.
So I was closer.
Yeah, that's because I'm dealing with like $600,000 housing right now. Like that's the average price range. So then
it's like I only deal. Okay, do you know people who like flex a little bit like that? Like I only deal with 1.5 million or up houses.
Oh yeah, you see that all the time.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people that say I'm not gonna help somebody that's buying a manufactured home, for example, or no less than a certain amount. But at the end of the day, like I always tell my clients, every deal is a deal, and you just never know. It's all about referrals, word of mouth. I've driven all the way to Nukuyama, to California Valley. Actually, I just got a call earlier, that somebody's like, hey, do you sell properties in California Valley? And I was like, absolutely. Like you tell me anywhere and I'll go. I'm here to help out in any way.
In California?
In California. We're licensed for the whole state of California. I just closed a deal in Salinas. I did Bakersfield, Nukuyama, California Valley. I mean, all over the place. What's
the farthest north you've gone?
The farthest north is Fowler, which is...
I've never gone that far. Farthest north I've gone to San Francisco, so
yeah.
I don't know.
No, it's actually kind of like more like central, Northern California. Like, so you pass Fresno, around there.
Okay. Do you see it getting more expensive further up north, or just bigger cities? Obviously, it's gonna be more expensive.
So it just depends on the area. Salinas has been up there. I just closed a deal and it was $875. And so anything in the Bay Area is pretty pricey. Inland, like Bakersfield, is a little bit less expensive. Fresno is less expensive. Obviously here in Central Coast.
For those people who I met in Lemoore and live in Lemoore and Hanford area, I feel like those houses are still pretty good price. Because I've seen there's 3 bedroom, 2 bath, $500 and something thousand.
And actually sometimes they're a little bit less than that. I think 5 is like pushing it. I just sold a few properties in Avenel, which is not too far away from here. And a lot of people that live here in Paso Robles are actually buying over there because they get a bigger house for like a fraction of the price. I sold one for like 100 and something or 250, and they're like 4-bedroom houses with big yards, So they don't mind the commute. It just depends on the client itself. Are you willing to drive 50 miles? Just like kind of like the conversation I had earlier with my client. He wants to invest in real estate, and he's been like thinking about buying California Valley for the longest time, and he's just kind of hesitant because of the drive. It kind of discourages them. But then he's all like, you know what? It's still in the back of my head. Can you help me out? I really want to invest in California Valley.
Yeah.
But it's that drive that kind of discourages a lot of people. But there's affordable housing still available.
If you have multiple properties, you can still take advantage of affordable housing, or describe affordable housing first?
Affordable housing to me is like something within your price range, something that's not expensive.
Okay.
So when people say, "Oh yeah, no, real estate is so expensive and there's no affordable housing around here," I mean there is, but are you willing to take that drive? Are you willing to sacrifice? Just like for example here, let me just give you a scenario. Paso Robles, it's everybody wants to live in the city limits, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's just kind of weird because there's, depending on the time, I guess, there was a time where everybody wanted to live up in Jardine, outskirts.
Jardine, Geneseo.
Yeah, Geneseo, Jardine, which is the outskirts of Paso Robles. And then all of a sudden, hearsay, right? Somebody has a problem with their water well, and then all of a sudden, they're assuming that every house in Jardine or every house in Geneseo has problems with the water, and it doesn't necessarily mean that. I mean, every property itself has their own well, depending on the owner, how deep, because that's another, conversation, but there's a lot of factors in the water wells. How many gallons per minute does the water well pump? How deep is it? Does it have chemicals or filters, and just a bunch of stuff that not necessarily mean that just because you have it that the neighbor's gonna have that same scenario.
Right.
So then all of a sudden nobody wanted to buy in Jardine or Geneseo because hearsay, but anyways, now everybody wants to go buy in Geneseo and Jardine again, so it's just kind of like
it's like a back and forth
thing.
Like
so
like you said, it's the timing of the year.
It's the timing of the year, and I think just, I don't know, the influence, I guess, or
I think a big
the power of the word, I guess.
I think a big part is, like, let's say 1 year everybody's like, no, don't go because of the water wells or something,
right.
for whatever reasons, or but then that one or two people that do take the chance and buy the house in that area, and then they fix it up, and they're like, oh, here's the possibility, I want to go do that now too.
Right.
So like there's a fear of missing out that could have happened.
Yes, and then once somebody does it, then all of a sudden everybody wants to do it. There's a book, I can't remember which one, because I read a lot of books, but on one of the books, there's a scenario about this guy that was trying to run the mile in less than 4 minutes, and he couldn't do it, and he couldn't do it, and he couldn't do it. And then finally somebody comes in and does it for like $3.91 or something like that. And then all of a sudden, I don't know if it's our mindset or what, but all of a sudden, because he knew that it can actually get done, now all of a sudden he was like at 3.5. It's like, it's very powerful, believe it or not. Just like you said, the fear of missing out or whatever, you don't want to try, but then the minute that you see somebody else trying it, all of a sudden you're able to accomplish it. The same thing with homeownership. I see it all the time where people, I have a lot of clients that reach out to me on Instagram just because they see that I gave keys to like a young couple or like a young brothers or single dad or whatever the scenario is. And at first they will be like, I will never qualify. Why should I try? I don't think I'll qualify. And they just kind of put self-doubt in their heads. But then the minute that they see a young person, purchase a house, they're like, wait, if he can do it, why can't I do it?
Yeah, somebody else did it, I should be able to do it.
Yeah. So
same thing with the other side, the age, right?
The
older
age,
people, that's a 30-year mortgage.
Right.
Who's going to take that risk? But then you can do things to make that mortgage.
Yeah, you can always refinance it and shorten the term.
Yeah.
I mean, or it's an asset that you're going to live for. It's kind of like how do you say it? Legacy that you're going to leave for your kids, so it goes over to your kids, your grandkids, or whatever, and that's what people look at retirement. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to keep the house for 30 years. You can always sell it and use that for your retirement or whatever the scenario is. There's also mortgages that do reverse mortgage. So once you get to a certain age, instead of you physically making a mortgage payment, the bank pays you
to buy it back.
That
is kind of cool. But you have to be, I'm going to say, like 15 years old.
Yeah. So that's for like the old, once you get older, and you don't want to, and you don't have any kids, or you don't want your kids to be fighting over your will or your properties, and you just want to take advantage of it back.
Yeah. So and that's when I go in 2016 when I moved back. It's been 9 years. I would have been 4 years shy away if it's 15 years, right? And that's what I think about all the time. Gosh darn it, I should have done that. I should have done this.
Yeah, but it's never too late,
Yeah.
And you took the risk, so you should be very proud of yourselves.
Yeah, we don't like the house though.
That's
another story. But and I went into it with the mindset of like, there's kind of things we're gonna have to fix on a used house.
Right.
No, there's not really new housing houses here in this area being built, right? It's just mostly apartments is what I've seen.
Well, there's new construction all over the county, but depending on the price range, again, a lot of the times people don't. And even then, if you get brand new housing, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's a perfect house. I had an old boss that he bought a house up at Spanish Lakes or Spanish, oh my gosh, a brand new house, beautiful house.
Yeah.
And he didn't do a home inspection. And even sometimes, the home inspections can be, kind of like 50-50 because the inspector comes in and looks at the house that day. And it doesn't necessarily mean like, okay, so the washer's working today, but 2 weeks down the road, it's not working, and you're like,
Or like for our example, dishwasher works fine. It starts up, it drains, or for the most part drains.
Right.
But then when you actually do dishes, because they're not going to come up with the box of dishes that they're going to use.
Right.
And there's like a whole bunch of water left behind. You're just like, okay, so it's not working properly.
Right.
Obviously, there's a lot of things that the inspector's not going to cover.
Right.
But it's just one of those things where like, is an inspection on a newer house or older house, like, do you always recommend inspection?
I always recommend it 110% for sure. Just so that we can kind of get an idea or have a peace of mind of what's going on with the property. Again, it just kind of sucks because things can be working perfectly, like you said right now. Like they tried the dishwasher, turns, it drains, it whatever, but does it clean, properly?
Right.
We don't know, right? Because he does his job whether it turns on, turns off, does it drain, does it not drain. The same thing with electrical, they work, all of a sudden the fuse goes off and we don't know, it might be electrical wiring, it might be the fuse. I mean, it could be so many different things that at least you have a better understanding of some things, especially the most important things, like if the roof is leaking, for example, or foundation is a big one, it can cost you, and that's where I was going with the story with my old boss.
Okay.
He didn't do a home inspection, and maybe if he would have done it, it would have saved him thousands of dollars in not buying the house. We don't know, right? It's the scenario of like, who knows what would have happened.
Yeah.
But he bought the house, beautiful home, and then one day they were walking barefoot in their bedroom, and they felt like what sounded like, insects crashed, like when you step on a bug or whatever, like a cricket or something. Well, it ends up being that the foundation was cracked, and so that was a big expense. I mean, it could be anywhere from like $10,000 to like $50,000, or who knows, depending on. There was a house up at Jardine, beautiful house, the same thing, and it was like $100 and something thousand just for the foundation, because it all depends on where it's cracked, how deep the crack is, and all that stuff.
What part of the house?
What part of the house and all that. So I'm not the expert on that, but I know that we get estimates on properties like that because I deal with a lot of investors that are willing to take that risk of fixing that house and investing on it, turning it around and selling it.
So I guess my question would be like, do you see it adding value to the house? Let's say you buy a house for $300,000 and you had to fix something like a foundation piece of it that costs $50,000. Does it translate into the house? Now it's worth $350,000, or like how does that work?
Well, invested money, it's $350,000.
Yeah.
But the value is always going to be there, regardless. Statistically, prices are going up 10 to 15% every year. Sometimes you don't really see it, but believe it or not, it's up there. And as far as like I understand what your question, but like depending on how much you bought it for and how much the value of it is, it's what determines whether it's a good deal or not.
Right.
So a lot of my investor partners, they look at after repair value. So are they gonna invest in a property that's at market right now to try to reinvest in? No, absolutely not. They're gonna try to look for something that needs work so they can offer less, invest a little bit of money, turn around and make money at the same time. if that answers your question.
Yeah, because I think a lot of people who go into buying a house, if it's not going to be their forever home, it's going to be their starter, they think about those things, right? So one of the questions I would probably have myself as a first-time home buyer is, what can I do, if everything works fine, what can I do to add value to the house that I just purchased?
Well, that's another great question. So it depends on how you bought it. You know, so if you bought it already remodeled, there's really not so much that you can add value to it. But then again, you can do energy efficient. You can add curb appeal, landscape in the back. I mean, there's a lot of little things that, even though, like say you have a move-in ready house, you can still add value to it. You know, right now the energy efficient windows, solar, I mean, there's a lot of factors that can come into place. And then obviously, if it's a fixer-upper, you know, a lot of people that want to make that house go in value, they try to go with something that they can see the potential to make it more. Like for example, there's a house that's colored orange, you know, and purple or whatever, and the cabinets are maybe a little bit outdated, and maybe the carpet's like that green or that brown marble looking or whatever. A lot of the times, well, right now I see a lot of my clients are like move-in ready. You know, they want something that they can just move in to that house. But if you're able to find something that needs a little bit of TLC, you can get a good deal on it and then just invest on it and make more money for your buck.
Yeah. Around, let's say if somebody is going to invest, fix it up, let's say they have enough for the down payment of 3.5%. You know, and their goal is to make money off of it. How long do you recommend them to wait to sell the house, regardless of like the loan? Like, I know there's specific things you can and cannot do with the loans. Like if you sell within the year, you're gonna get taxed so many capital gains, right?
So usually within the first 2 years, you have to keep the house at least 2 years without selling, because if you sell it, then it becomes like investment property. So investors usually, you know, try to fix it right away and then resell it. With as a primary residence, you know, for down payment assistance, they recommend for you to be at least in the property for 2 years as your primary residence, and then later you can sell without getting capital gain or whatever. And if it's your primary residence, you can do whatever you want with the money after the fact. If it's investment, then you have to reinvest that money or pay capital gain. And that's why investors keep buying and selling and rebuying and selling and so on.
Was there a year or multiple years where there was a perfect opportunity to flip?
Yeah, I mean, there's
it's always the right time to flip.
You know, that opportunities are always there. You know, and it's just, are you prepared for when that opportunity comes in? Because if you're not prepared, then you're always chasing the market, right? So say, and I always tell my clients, find out exactly where you stand right now. And then if for whatever reason you're not physically or mentally ready, you know, in paper you might be ready, right? But a lot of the times people are like still kind of hesitant to make that move of commitment. As long as you know where you stand right now, and all of a sudden you see a house that comes in and it's like $50,000 less than what the market is selling, if you're ready to go, you might have that opportunity to get that house. But if you're not, then other people are going to come in and beat you to the punch, because you have to start the process. So now it's like, okay, I have to gather all my documents, I have to reach out to the lender, blah, blah, blah. And it takes time. It's not like tomorrow or like today and then in an hour you're able to do things. I mean, sometimes depending on the lender, and if you have all your documentation that you need, then you usually can find out within that day or the next day, as far as, you know, your pre-approval. But if you don't have all your documentation, where you just send a pay stub but you don't send your bank statements or you don't send your taxes, then you can't really get an actual approval. There's a difference between a pre-approval and a pre-qual. So pre-qual is just kind of like, oh, how much do you make? and you kind of estimate, everything's estimated. And then the pre-approval actually runs your credit, checks your debt to income ratio, your assets, how much money do you have, and just kind of complete package so that way you're ready to go.
Yeah.
But yes, opportunities are always there.
They're always there. Yeah.
Just take advantage of them.
Yeah. Do you find yourself when you watch a TV show, or because I know there's new shows on Netflix that came out, like Taking Manhattan or Taking Over Manhattan, like
whatever. $1 million listing.
$1 million listing.
Selling Sunset.
When you see that, do you find yourself going, "That's not how that works," or
Yes.
"That's how that works"?
Most of the time, I would say like 90% that's not how it works. But for the most part, I mean, real estate, selling real estate is not what you see on TV for sure. You know, there's so many behind the scenes scenarios that people don't know. The TV show is just like all glamour, you know, in high heels and stuff like that, which, you know, sometimes I wear that, but I'm jumping fences sometimes, you know, in the dirt and the mud, cleaning out places, you know, because your clients have moved out and they just left everything and we have to close and the house has to be cleared. So we're cleaning out the house in the middle of summer, you know, just so many different things, like sweeping, cleaning. So you don't see none of that stuff on TV. It's more like drama, gossip.
Would you ever start a TV show that shows the nitty-gritty stuff?
Or
would you ever like to see one? Like if somebody comes out and be like, all right, like they're gonna follow them 24, not 24/7, but from sun up to sundown, and be like, this was actually happening, and then you like, let's say like the whole episode is just them like going through escrow, like they
yeah, and every escrow is totally different. You know, everybody is. I mean, we all celebrate and we see like the end result, like congratulations, we gave you keys and stuff like that. But like again, you know, nobody really knows the behind the scenes and the hard work and the negotiations and the emails and the praying, you know, and everything that goes behind the scenes. I did start doing something like that a while ago with another colleague in real estate. His name was Kyle Batty, and we started doing Anchor Agents. That was our little podcast thingy. And we'll always be talking about like scenarios or things that happened to us and the life of real estate, you know, putting up your own signs, you know, like people don't see that. Like I'm out there, you know, making holes and putting my sign. My car is like completely full of stuff and I can barely, you know, fit in my car. Just a lot of things. But very rewarding, and I love doing what I do.
Don't forget to say that on camera.
So I'm not discouraging anybody from being a realtor. Actually, I'm very motivated about, you know, if somebody mentions anything about being a realtor, I'm like, absolutely, try it. I mean, you just never know. Like, it has to be a passion and a purpose in any business, you know, that you genuinely want to do. It's not just entitlement or like, you know, like, oh, like you said on the TV shows where, oh yeah, we made all this money and blah blah blah. You know, it maybe them over there, I don't know, but
in the big cities,
millions and millions of dollars listings probably. But here, you know, like I said, it's all about helping. I mean, that's how I take it. I love helping families. I always say one family at a time. And you know, we're in it together. And even though sometimes, you know, things happen, bad experience happen, I always tell my clients, you're not alone. You know, if I can help, I can help. You know, even after closing. I mean, you're one of my clients and my witness, and I'm always like trying to help in one way or another, whether I can or not, at least mentally, physically, emotionally, and verbally, and financially or whatever. I'm always trying to help one way or another.
Have you ever had a client where you don't want to help?
No, actually, not yet.
Like they were that bad, or like
no, but I've heard stories, you know, where people have fired, you know, because technically, you know, like I tell everybody, I work for my clients, you know, like you guys don't work for us. Like, you're hiring us to do a service.
Yeah.
And we're providing a service. But sometimes, I've heard stories where even though you hired somebody for that service, they will fire you because, complicated or not necessarily complicated.
The client will fire the realtor?
No, the realtor will hire.
Oh,
the realtor will fire quit or whatever you want to call it. Because a lot of the times, like I tell everybody, we state facts. And then at the end of the day, it's ultimately your decision whether you want to agree or disagree with either the offer or negotiations or whatever. And even though I think it's more probably so on a listing that I've heard that they've done that, because they give them like, hey, after a certain period we should do a price reduction, and they're very adamant, and I get it, I mean, so far it hasn't happened to me, thank God, and I hope I'm not. I mean, I'm trying to do my best, but I'm thinking that it's probably because they don't want to do a price reduction or whatever the scenario is. And sometimes we are very prideful of what we own, that we always think like, oh, my house is worth $1 million. But then when we want to sell, we want $1 million. But when we want to buy,
we want it cheaper.
Yeah,
right?
we want to make a deal.
It's a cake and eat it situation, right?
Yeah, so I think that's probably one of the reasons. But again, it hasn't happened to me. I've just heard. So I don't really know the actual bottom line as to why somebody would fire somebody.
Yeah.
Maybe just they didn't agree to certain things,
Well, it being a Paso Robles podcast, we got to talk about Paso Robles a little bit. Every time I talk to somebody about Paso Robles, and a lot of people are moving away too from California in general, right?
Right.
But ever since I can remember, when it comes to the pricing of this area, is you're paying for the way Paso look, like the experience of Paso, the feel of Paso. You're paying for the view, pretty much. I feel like a lot of the times, right? Do you think it's at par of what the living costs should be here? Because obviously nobody wants to pay $10 a gallon of gas.
This is a question.
No. It's more of like, what's your personal opinion? Like, obviously you've talked about living in town, living out of town, and obviously the price of the house is changing there, too, right? If everybody wants to go live in Jardine, prices go up, I'm assuming.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It depends.
Right. On the time.
On the time.
On the market. But I'm talking about Paso Robles in general, right? A lot of businesses open and close, all that stuff. But as far as like the cost of living in this area, do you think like if people move away because it's too expensive, is that like reasonable? Like what are your thoughts on this area? Because you've grown up here too, But if you go to like Bradley or something, I don't know. I don't know if they have stores over there. Do they? Is it just houses?
They have a little store.
A little store. Like let's say you go to a way smaller town and everything's cheaper.
Right.
Do you see yourself living in a small town situation? You know what I mean?
If you're asking me personally, yes. But me physically seeing it from my clients, I have clients that are all over the place. That's what I'm telling you. People that want to be in town, just because everything's so convenient. Like walking distance, or even school, and they have kids in sports. Yeah. I mean, I was part of it myself. So I actually was born in Compton, lived in LA. So
straight out of Compton. Do you like saying that?
I didn't officially say that. But I was so used to the big city and places being open, and even though I was younger, I knew like there was always light, there was always something going on. And then the minute I moved to Paso Robles, honestly, I hated it. I hated it with a passion, because we moved here in November and it was super cold. And we were used to like perfect weather, or even like after that we moved to Palm Springs, so it was like, hot and whatnot. But we moved here in November and it was super, super, super cold. And then I was working and going to school. So when I would get off work, I wanted to go get something to eat, and everything was closed.
So Jack in the Box on 24th Street, that's pretty much it.
Yeah, and even then,
Denny's.
Even then, I think some of those fast food restaurants were closed. Yeah, I think there was only, probably I think it was Jack in the Box.
Jack in the Box and Denny's.
And Denny's, that was
it.
And everything else closed. Taco Bell, McDonald's, everything will close. So then I hated it. And I couldn't wait till I turned 18 so I could move away from here and go back to the city life. But then, God had other plans. I ended up getting married. I had my kids. And then I didn't want to live anywhere else but here because everything was so close and convenient for me. I ended up being a single mom. So school, picking up my kids, dropping them off to sports and going to work and everything. It was only like blocks away. So everything was so convenient. Mm-hmm. Now my kids are older and now I want to be like out on the outskirts. So it kind of goes the same way with everybody. Like the majority of my clients want to be in the city limit. But there's some that still are willing to take that drive to San Miguel. Yeah. San Miguel is only supposedly, I think it's like 7 miles or 8 miles or something like that. It's about 10 minutes from here. And now San Miguel is getting pricey and people didn't want to move to San Miguel or to Shandon because they wanted to be in the city. And now they want to get away from the city because there's too many tourists, there's too much like the cost of living. Right. Believe it or not, even though it's only 10 miles away, it's still a big difference. So driving 10 miles is way cheaper than living here and paying more for your house or for whatever the scenario is. But more businesses are closing. It's kind of unfortunate. I would love to see our local businesses, continue to blossom and do great, but rent's expensive, and so they can't afford it. Like they can't afford to pay their employees on top of their rent.
And the product that they whatever it is,
And product is getting expensive. I mean, just the cost of eggs right now. Thank God I don't have to worry about that.
You have chickens, right?
Yeah, chickens now.
We don't buy eggs. We don't really eat eggs. But I'm assuming anything that comes with eggs is more expensive to begin with too.
Right.
But like the cost of living, it goes up and down, and that's what I've always been aware of, right? Mm-hmm. If for some reason I'm a big egg person that eat eggs all the time and prices of eggs go up, does it mean eat less eggs? Does it mean just outsource them to somebody who has their own eggs? Like what does it look like to you? Like if you know for sure something's gonna go up in price that you have to buy every day, like coffee, right? You get Starbucks. Yeah. I'm assuming.
I don't really go in.
This episode's not brought to you by Starbucks.
No, actually I don't go out and drink Starbucks. Yesterday was the exception. I was turning in keys and I had my doggies in the car, so I want to get them a little cappuccino since they were in the car, for like 5 hours. But for the most part, I just do my own coffee. I love coffee. I can drink coffee all day, every day. But yes, like you said, am I going to give up coffee just because it went up 50 cents or $1? Probably not, Yeah. And so you sacrifice other things that are less irrelevant. Right. And so that you can be able to still drink your coffee.
And then when I started thinking about those things, we're like, no, even if it goes up $1, I'll still buy it or drink or whatever, eat whatever it is. So I started thinking about the company that's raising the prices for whatever reason, they have that same mentality. It's like, they're willing to spend more money, so we're just gonna
probably. I think it's just the demand, with everything. So, even when real estate, for example, going back to real estate, when the rates went super low, now the payment was a little bit more affordable. Right. So people were willing to invest more money on the price. And everybody wanted to buy it. And so demand is very, very crucial in any aspect of life, whether it's, food or real estate or clothing or whatever the scenario is. Yeah. And especially right now, actually, earlier today, they were talking about influencers, for example, and they were saying like how influencers are, saying like, buy this product, but not necessarily knowing like the factors that come into place, like damaging factors or like skin rashes or whatever. Mm-hmm. But because you see it or the influencer said it, you go out and buy it. So it's the same thing, demand.
Like there's this new crypto coin that these influencers are pushing.
Right.
Get in now.
Tom
Brady. Do you consider yourself an influencer in real estate? Because I
think everybody is an influencer in any aspect of business. Influencer to me is somebody that kind of motivates somebody. Whether to me, I want to motivate people to become homeownerships. Even if they don't go with me, it's an investment that's gonna be beneficial for them in the future. And it's a stepping stone.
Do you ever, when you're talking to people like the preliminary stuff, right? You have a sit down with them, you see what their goals are and stuff. Have you ever had and you don't have to say names obviously, but have you ever had a client where you go, you're a potential client where you go, I don't think home ownership is right at the moment for you?
Well, it happens with everybody. Like I said, I have clients that come in, and everybody that comes in has that 1% of faith or hope that they can become homeownership.
Yeah.
A homeowner or whatever. And even if it's at 1%, is still a positive, how do you say it? A positive turn or whatever. I don't know how to explain it. Because you have to want it. Nobody's going to come and ask you without them not wanting.
Yeah. So you kind of get the feel if they really want it or not during the conversation?
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, everybody that comes in is because they do.
Yeah, they took that first step.
They took that first step. That's what I'm saying. Even if it's at 1%, it's taking that first step. So I always tell everybody, you should be very proud of yourself for reaching out to me just to get informed. Even if it's just to get information, it's a huge step because, believe it or not, there's a lot of people out there that don't even take that first step because they're afraid, because of the neighbor told them that unless they have 20% down, they can't buy.
Because their parents told them we've never been able to buy, so why can you?
Exactly. And most of the times it is the parents, because you don't see that in that household. My parents didn't buy a house, so I can never.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of Mexican parents who have been paying rent for 30 years. Never taken that leap.
The people that I just closed escrow yesterday, it was like kind of bittersweet. He was telling me a story about him physically working in these houses where he ended up buying. Yeah. Years ago, like 18 years ago. And he was like working in the house and saying, oh, it's impossible. We would never have a house like this. How come we work on these houses could not have a house like this? Like a brand new house, 2 stories.
So they talked themselves down a little bit.
So they basically, we all kind of like mentally talk ourselves out of things all the time, And luckily, their son, has a different mentality. So the son was like motivating them. And then guess what? They ended up buying the house that he ended up building 18 years ago that he thought that he couldn't ever buy. Yeah. So it was like kind of like super bittersweet yesterday and so rewarding to see that I was able to be a part of that. So I don't know, those are the stories that make me love my job.
And makes it good for a podcast.
I love my job. But anyways, so no, to answer your question, I never discourage anybody from obtaining homeownership. If it works out, great. If it doesn't, it doesn't. It's not the right time. But that doesn't mean that they can't work towards, eventually getting there. And at least them coming and asking and getting them formed, it's planting that seed of hope. That maybe not right now, but eventually.
And then you have those check-ins later in life, right?
Like,
somebody does, you know what, right now we're going to wait a little bit. And then like 2 years later, you get that message
we're
ready.
You'll be surprised. They say, oh, I'm not going to buy until a year or two. And then Next thing you know, we're in escrow, you know? So it happens all the time.
Yeah, I know when we first started talking, right, we already talked to other people, right. And it was a little discouraging because they were asking for like the percentage down. They were asking to have this amount of credit and all this fun stuff that, you know, we had 2 out of 3, you know, and then we weren't qualified, so we had to keep constantly working it. Then we sat down with you, and I told you straight up, like, hey, we've been told we're not qualifying for this such, and my expectations were very low at the time, like whether it was like. And
actually, and sorry to cut you off, but I'm glad and I'm proud of you guys to still continue to ask other people, because believe it or not, the majority of the people, when they get discouraged, they never ask again. Then they're like, why should I even try? They're not even going to give it to me. Yeah. Oh, I don't even have the 20% down, so why even ask again? You know?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, no, and what I was going to say is, like, I think we were even worse off because we were paying rents that kept rising every year. Right. So it was very interesting to see that side of you. And that's why I asked, like I thought already we were like not a good case to begin with. So, you know, and that's where my mind was like, is there a worse case that you've ever done? Like, oh, hell no.
Right, and you know, to answer your question, you know, even though you said you guys were not mentally or physically or financially ready, I didn't discourage you guys. I actually said no. Like, if there's a will, there's a way. Like, don't get discouraged. The last thing we can lose is hope. I don't even think we talked about any kind of numbers as far as like compensation. No.
That we didn't talk about because at some point our situation was very unusual, is what we talked about, right? But there was multiple times where like money had to come up with, and it was small amounts, but it was like more and more and more, to the point where I asked, like, okay, how much should we have? Because it's starting to turn out that we should have money, not that we, you know, didn't
not to use, but for reserves.
Right. So that started coming up a lot, and but we didn't talk about it until we started moving forward on a house. So I honestly think it was a really cool experience to be able to go check out houses and have that experience. And then once we started making offers, that's where the rest of the numbers started coming in. So how do you prepare your clients to look at the numbers up until then? Because obviously we didn't look at numbers at all other than the price on Zillow. Right.
Well, it depends on, like I said, it depends on every bank. And constantly, the other thing is that every bank's constantly changing, not just the banks, but our laws in real estate. So it kind of makes it, we're learning as we go. So there's like a new form, or there's a new, all of a sudden they want reserves, or all of a sudden they want this. Or like, for example, now they want an engineering cert, even though there's a 433A on a manufactured home, which means that 433A means that the house, the manufactured home, is already in a permanent foundation. When before it used to be sufficient. Now it's like a requirement, you know, to double check. And the same thing with reserves. Sometimes, you know, they ask for 1 month, sometimes they ask for 2 months. And we won't know sometimes until we go into conditions. You know, the lender will come back and be like, okay, we need this. Or we need a letter of explanation for that. And everything looks good and dandy, but until you're actually going through the whole process, they might ask, like, for example, verification of employment. You know, you work for a big corporation, and they call the corporation, and you know, it's not the same as somebody in a local office where they can just pick up the phone. They have to send in a document and things that sometimes you don't know until you're actually there. But as far as like numbers, like your mortgage payment and stuff like that, you know, obviously that's a given at the beginning. But as far as like, you know, other things that come up, that's sometimes out of our control, and we kind of work as we go, you know. But for closing costs, it usually is an estimate. Remember, I had mentioned an estimate. We estimate about 2% of the closing cost is of the sales price. So if the house is $500, it's about $10,000, give or take. And then if we're doing down payment assistance, you know, the bank covers the down payment, but then there's another program that covers the closing costs. the rate's a little bit higher, and so now you're like changing things, trying to make it work to where it's going to be beneficial to you as a client at the end of the day.
Yeah, and I think that's where Edgar came into play too, right?
Right.
And he was like kind of like the magician background.
Yeah.
Stuff. Because even now when we're trying to figure out the home insurance and stuff like that, and finally got in contact with somebody, the person we talked to, I want to say it was Leonard.
Yeah,
Leonard. We talked to him, and he was he goes, oh, it's unusual the way you're set up and stuff like that. And it's because Edgar did some work to get us approved for the mortgage itself and stuff like that. So the insurance had to be a certain way and all that stuff.
And that's a big thing right now. So we've been having a lot of issues.
Let's talk about that.
Yeah, we've been having a lot of issues with insurance, and not a lot of people are being able to qualify for home insurance, especially if you're in a rural area. And so then it's like your deductible. For example, I just had one that we just closed recently, and it had to be the Fair Act plan or whatever. So it's an extra cost on top of the regular home insurance. So not only did the home insurance price go up, now they have to get extra insurance because it's fire, a place where there potentially be a fire.
Right. And
so now that has to go through the state, and the wording has to be specific, and then the deductible cannot exceed $1,000, and we're over here trying to raise the deductible.
Can't exceed?
No.
That's so weird.
Exactly. So we were like trying to raise the deductible so that we can lower the premium, and no. It's been a learning experience. I'm telling you, every transaction has been something,
Yeah.
I mean, there's no such thing as a smooth escrow. There's always something that comes up, not necessarily with the loan or with the house. It can be the insurance, it can be escrow, it can be, so many different factors that can come into play.
Yeah. And now with the fires that are going on, I'm sure they're even changing more. Because they changed last year, right?
Yeah.
They got rid of fire insurance, or the fire part, whatever. And now fires happen. And now, obviously, local and state government are doing things to try to help with that situation, right?
They're trying. We'll see what happens. But, we had Sharon Never last on my podcast.
Yeah, she mentioned
something about helping, people buy
a grant.
If they a grant to purchase another property if they lost a property. But it's like you have to be in the extremes in order to be able to get that help. But the policies are constantly changing.
And that's one of the things I've noticed as a homeowner is you'll get very broad estimates if it's not worst case scenario.
Right.
It has to get worse before you can actually fix it, which is insane because you think to yourself, no, I see it. I'm living with it every single day. This is happening. And then it goes we can start a claim, but once you start a claim, you get check marked on the paperwork, and the next time you try to get insurance.
It's like a process. You have to go here first. If that doesn't work, then it goes to that portion of it. If that doesn't work, then it goes there. And then finally, it's like the extreme. But I feel you.
Yeah, it's crazy because we have moisture in the walls and stuff like that. And I guess after this rain, we'll see if it's still there.
Right.
But it was, we did call a few people, and they were like, oh yeah, we got to do this, and we'll tarp it off and everything. And I'm like, whoa. Can you cut a hole in the wall and just check where it's coming from? That's all we're asking for. But no, they have a procedure themselves. Right. And to me, it's, if you didn't know better, or at least you didn't have the right questions, someone might think you're being taken advantage of. Right.
Right. That's why I know. That's why I'm like, I'm here for you guys for emotional support.
Yeah, talk to your realtor. which I guess we take this moment, like, if you want to tell the listeners or whoever's watching this, like, where can people reach you? And where can people reach you?
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram or Facebook. It's pretty easy. Just realtor, and then my name, Elizabeth Gutierrez. So realtor Elizabeth Gutierrez. The same thing with my email, realtorelizabethgutierrez@gmail.com. I kind of just made it simple in all the platforms, but I know my name's kind of long, but But it's pretty easy. Just remember my name and I'm a realtor, and then you can find me.
Yeah.
Google me, anything. So my cell phone number is 805-286-6617. Again, 805-286-6617. How many what?
Do you find people reaching out on social media more, or like calling?
More on social media, actually. Instagram, a lot. A lot of my clients come from Instagram. Just recently, everybody keeps telling me to do videos on TikTok. I'm not a TikTok person, but I figured, you know what, let me take a shot.
Okay.
And some of the videos that I've created on Instagram, I just kind of posted them on TikTok. And believe it or not, I've gotten so much people reaching out to me from TikTok. So I guess that's something I need to start learning a little bit more and be out there a little bit more on TikTok.
Yeah. Is there things you do in the Paso Robles area to kind of like get your name out there? Like events? I know you probably go to the Hispanic Association events, or what's it called?
Hispanic Business Association.
The Hispanic Business Association. Maybe one day they want me there, but
yes, I can sign you up.
I got no money right now.
I've been a part of the HBA for a long time, actually, since it started. It was just a few of us back then, and now it's growing into something, bigger and better. And we got recognition by the city of Paso Robles, September, October for Hispanic Heritage Month. So we got recognition with the city council. We were there. It was actually pretty rewarding to see that, because we've come from nothing to being recognized with the city. We got to do Day of the Dead at the park, at downtown park, and we've been wanting to be a part of that for a long, long time. Also, Mujeres de Acción, they did the September 16 event at the park. So they gave them the half portion of the park for their day, and they gave us the other portion of the park for our day. So that was really, really, really rewarding. But as far as the community, I've always been involved in the community, even before I was a realtor. Just as a single mom, I always wanted to participate in everything that my daughters were a part of. So
were you like a booster? One parents?
I wasn't a booster, but I was part of the board for PRGSL, which is the Paso Robles Girls Softball League, AYSO, which is soccer. I was part of the board for Allen Acres Charter School.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and so I was there before we got the new building. So I was part of that transaction. So that was pretty rewarding too. And I was driving when I moved from here, and even though my kids weren't going to Allen Acres anymore, I was still driving from Arroyo Grande over here because my business is here also. The majority of my clients are from Paso Robles, believe it or not. I would say probably like 70% come from this area. Paso Robles, San Miguel, Shandon, Tascadero, Templeton, and up at the lake. And so I've been involved with that. I've been involved with Lifeline, which is pro-life. I know people have mixed emotions on that, but that's what I believe in. So I'm very passionate about that, and just being involved in everything. I helped Maria Garcia be part of the city council, and we did grassroots. We were knocking on people's doors and asking every single family, what are your concerns in the city of Paso Robles? And we wrote everything down, and we wanted to make Paso Robles a better place. The same thing with the Hispanic Business Association. We've done a lot of events, the Mardi Gras. We were the first ones to do Mardi Gras downtown with Richard Benitez, que en paz descanse, he passed away, but he was a very important person in our industry. I was part of the Cinco de Mayo Scholarship Committee that gave scholarships to graduating seniors. I could go on and on and on of all the things that I've done here. I try to give back to the community all the time. I helped my niece start her business by giving free haircuts, right before school. I do the Toys for Tots every year, and yeah, just a lot of things. I do career day. I love like trying to motivate kids to do better, and our youth and our elders are who need us, the most. So I love helping the youth a lot. Anything that I can do to help them, I do. And then I'm a mom. So.
Yeah, that's a lot, and that's one thing.
And that's some of it. I can keep going.
Do you see those youths that you talk to eventually get older and they want to buy a house?
Actually,
you're like planting the seed.
Yeah, and like for example, the one that we just closed. He's a single dad, and I give him mad props for it. People, like, again, they get discouraged and they think that they can't afford to buy a house. And he was able to buy a house with no money down and, the down payment assistance program. And he was somebody that was hanging out with my brother, and they were little kids. And now, he reached out to me to help him. And honestly, that feels so good to me to be able to help somebody that I knew, while they were growing up. And not just him, but there's another girl, Haley and Ruben. I adore them, and I'm so proud of them. They bought a house when the market was kind of like right before COVID, and the market was kind of before it started going crazy. Yeah. And and they were a young couple, and so all this stuff. Every client is very special to me. Everybody has a special story. Even you guys, Crystal. I know his wife. I know Crystal since she was, a baby. Well, maybe not baby, but pretty young. And so to be a part of that journey, it's really rewarding to help and see you guys take that initiative. And I always try to motivate everybody. I bought my first house when I was 18 years old, so I post that on Instagram like, hey, if I did it, you guys can do it. Home ownership is not for everybody, but I encourage it a lot. And you can, a lot of the times, people want to buy the perfect house or the ranch or whatever. Yeah. And I always tell them don't get too how do you say it? Don't get too focused on that. Focus on something that your needs, because there's a difference between your needs and wants. I want $1 million ranch on the beach, but do I really need it? Probably not. But it's needs and wants are very, 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 very important to know. That way you can separate yourself from getting disappointed and discouraged, and also learn to, stepping stone. You buy your first house, maybe it's not your forever home. It's okay, but at least you're investing on something, because you eventually can sell it, get that money back, and while you're renting, you're never going to see that money. Right.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that one of the big motivators on what has made us move forward with actually getting a house. Because that was a big factor, is either raise the rent one more time. We already downsized from a 3-bedroom to a 2-bedroom.
But then the rent went up.
But then it went up. So what was the point?
What was the point of downsizing if know?
So when we're talking about scenarios or the mindset people have as far as they get discouraged, they're afraid of making that or reaching out and stuff like that, and when we're saying that out loud, I can think of so many people that feel that way, right? What are you doing? And that's why I asked about the community service and all stuff. How are you reaching people to get some, to motivate them, to wake them up a little bit, not forcefully, but you know what I mean? Because if there's 100 people and you've only talked to 2, you have 98 more people that you probably should talk to because they need that motivation. How are you reaching them besides social media?
I think right now the main focus is probably social media, believe it or not, because even though I'm not physically talking to them, they're seeing. Right. It's like I was telling you with the mile, for example. Even though he thought he couldn't accomplish that mile, but the minute that he saw somebody else do it, then he was motivated, and then he ended up doing it. And the same thing with the power of social media, I would say. You know, just me posting, you know, key day or, you know, somebody accomplished the goal of homeownership, it motivates them to reach out to me. I don't necessarily have to go out and reach out to them. They reach out to me and tell me, hey, I want you to help me like you helped them.
Yeah.
And so then that is a big factor. Again, you know, I'm always a phone call or a text away.
Yeah.
And I always try to emphasize that to everybody. My kids, you know, now they're older, so they're not with me 24/7, but when they were younger, they would tell me like, I don't want to go to the store because every time I go somewhere, it was a conversation starter, you know?
You talk, you know.
Yeah, I'm talking to everybody, and I'm passing. It's an opportunity anywhere I go, gas station or whatever. It's an opportunity for me to talk about what I do.
Right.
You know, if I'm not an agent that's like a secret agent, because everybody knows I'm a realtor, and not necessarily because I'm out there, but because, you know, word of mouth and a combination of everything, you know. And so when people know what you do and they like you and they respect you, they'll do business with you. So I think that's one of the major things that has helped me, that if I'm at the gas station and they're like, oh, like for example, there was the other, what was it? Oh yeah, I went to go get an x-ray on my hand because my finger was hurting a lot, and I wasn't sure if it was like I fractured it or what, you know?
Yeah.
And my cousin and my family were like, you probably have early signs of arthritis or carpal tunnel.
Just being all negative, you know?
Well, I think they were just
es que todo el tiempo en el teléfono también.
Yeah, so then I was like, you know, we self-diagnose ourselves or whatever.
Yeah.
And sure enough, it goes worst case scenario, right?
Yeah.
Like it's never like, oh, what if it's just a sore muscle? No, it's like, oh my gosh, do I have carpal tunnel or do I have arthritis? So then I was like, you know, I need to go to the doctor. So then she checked me or whatever. She goes, it doesn't look like you have any early signs, but let's do an x-ray.
Yeah.
So I went to go do an x-ray, and when I was there, this girl that I know, she's like, hey, you know, I've been meaning to reach out to you. Do you have your business card? And I was like, yeah, sure, you know. And then they're like, wait, what's your name? And and I said, when I was signing in, I was like, my name's Elizabeth Gutierrez. And I was like, yeah. Wait, you're the girl from Instagram, the one that sells houses? So it's like, people do know who you are, you know. And so yeah, the power of the word and social media that makes you know that you are available of, you know, their service or whatever.
Yeah.
But if you don't show your business, if you don't talk about your business, then how are people supposed to know?
Yeah, you just can't open up shop and expect people to come, right?
Exactly.
One of the stories you shared with me, and you had him on your podcast, is Mike.
Mike Henson, yeah.
Yeah, Mike Henson. And he said somebody reached out because of the fact that he was on the podcast.
Yeah. He said something about, what did he say?
Which is Get Real Estate with Liz.
Yeah, Get Real Estate with Liz.
Yeah.
And Mike sent me a message, and he's like, hey, I just wanted to say thank you for inviting me to your podcast. I actually got a lead from the podcast. Like, he watched me, you know, saying something on your podcast, and he had interviewed other loan officers or whatever, but he ended up choosing me because of what I said in your podcast when you were, you know, interviewing me. Mm-hmm. So I thought that was pretty cool, you know, to know that you're able to plant that seed for somebody else, and even for ourselves. I mean, getting out there, it's very, very, very important. You know, the same thing with sales. You know, people think that we are not salespeople, but maybe not a salesperson like pushy. Yeah. But sales is always going to be a part of any business. You know, because we're selling ourselves, we're selling our services. It's that's what we do. You know. So. Yeah.
And that's what I'm doing with the Paso Robles podcast. I'm trying to put.
I'm using me.
I'm using. You know, well, I have all these conversations all the time, and you know, this is something I want people to do for themselves as well, as tell their story in a podcast form and everything. Right. And I started thinking to myself, like, there's a lot of people that it's hard to not convince, but to like motivate them to share their story.
Right.
So why not just put myself in the hot seat
Right.
and invite them to be with me,
Right?
And that's the goal of this podcast, is to be able to highlight all the businesses and all the individuals that I know need to share their story.
Right.
And this is part of my journey, and kind of like you were part of our journey buying the house. We're part of your journey building your podcast and building your audience and stuff like that. So it's
which
like,
he's the behind the scenes on my podcast,
Yeah, it's like there's times where I come in and record by myself to make promo stuff, and I never post it because I don't like any of it.
Right.
My strength is talking to people and then posting that.
Right.
And so that's the goal for the Paso Robles Podcast. Paso Robles Podcast.
Right.
And I mean, we've been recording for over an hour, so.
Oh, wow. Has it been?
Yeah, it's been a lot, and I know we can talk more, but I know I want to talk to you about your podcast in a little bit, but yeah, I mean, you have your own podcast.
Right.
Yeah.
Thanks to you.
Yeah. You have the cool thing is you have your own wine if somebody buys a house too.
Oh, yeah. Thanks to the wine boss.
Yeah, thanks to Wine Boss, and then you help a lot of people.
Rosé, by the way.
It's
And
really
then
good.
eggs for my chickens.
Are you planning to reach out to people like, hey, if you ever need eggs?
Yeah, usually, I mean, I post it, and I've been giving it to my clients or business partners, loan officers, other realtors, We're all like friends here, so.
How many eggs are produced?
Honestly, I get about, like yesterday, I didn't check the day before, and yesterday I had gotten 35 eggs from my chicken coop.
One day?
And technically it's 2 days. So
2 days?
Yeah. So yeah.
Wow. So if somebody's on that protein kick and eats a lot of eggs, you're like, you're covered.
Relleno, sourdough bread, omelets, whatever you want. But it's been really rewarding actually. I got them as baby chicks, and then I saw them grow, and once hatching, choose Brody or whatever they call it, where they're laying on their eggs. So hopefully I'll have baby chicks there. But it's exciting. I get really super excited just to go up there and see that I have eggs. I mean, the first time that I had one egg, I was like jumping of excitement, waiting. I was patiently waiting. And finally when I got it, it was rewarding. And now it's like constantly, I'm like, oh my gosh.
Okay, too many eggs.
Too many eggs.
Too many eggs. Yeah, that's crazy. Like, I don't know what laws or restrictions there are within the city or outside the city, but I feel like everybody should at least have like a couple chickens or something.
That's funny that you said that, because I read something earlier today that in Belgium, the government gave 3 baby chicks to each family, and to help reduce waste. So all the scraps from your
all
food,
the packaging, yeah.
No, like all the food, your leftover food, you can feed it to your chickens.
Oh, yeah.
So then it was eliminating waste in the town, and also it produced chicken, eggs, and then it just helped the city or the town in general. And I was like, man, that sounds like a good idea. Everybody should have 2 or 3 chickens.
I mean, yeah. I mean, what? I'm sure there's work to that though, cleaning their.
Yeah. So you have to. Yeah. There's a lot of work.
Yeah.
And food and feeding them, and but it's rewarding. I think it keeps you sane.
Yeah.
Especially right now, I don't have my kids with me 24/7. Now I have animals to take care of.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Well, thank you for being on the podcast.
Of course.
I appreciate it. I know. I'm sure you'll be back on this one. Because I want to have repeating people, just because the market changes.
Right.
The market changes. You have new stories. Something happened.
Right.
There was a flood and there's water damage now in a lot of houses, which is another insurance thing that we can talk about.
That happened actually a couple of years ago.
After
the 2 rains, I think we talked about it in my other podcast with Jamie about subterranean termites and stuff like that we've never had, and then all of a sudden we had because of the saturated, ground. So
it's crazy.
there's always something.
Yeah, there's always something. Something changed. Something the way. When you buy the house during summer, it looks a certain way, feels a certain way, but then it gets to winter, and now you start noticing something different. Yeah,
or vice versa.
Yeah. That's insane. I would say buy a house during winter because when it rains,
you'll know
if it's.
That's what everybody says.
Yeah. Don't buy during summer, and I guess this is my personal opinion.
Right. But then again, you buy in the winter and you don't know if the air conditioning works, and then summer hits, and then
yeah.
So,
oh my god.
So there's always something, but you're not alone.
No estás. Se habla español también.
Oh yeah, hablo español. Sí se puede. And reach out to me if you guys have any questions about selling, buying, or investing in real estate.
Real quick, I thought about doing an episode in Spanish one day. Mm-hmm. So maybe get Somos from magazine.
Yeah.
Maybe getting her in
Vero,
and talking to her just in Spanish. That episode, Paso Robles Podcast.
Yeah, I can probably bring Vero and then maybe Maria from the HBA.
That'd be kind of cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that'd be
kind of
cool.
Piggyback,
or bring them on your podcast, or we can go back and forth. But yeah, no, this is awesome. Thank you.
So actually, I was thinking of bringing Maria into my podcast because we just I don't know if you guys are familiar with the HBA at all, but we kind of merged with Atascadero Chamber, and to just kind of grow our business. But it ended up not working out, so we're back to normal, and we're gonna be bigger and better. So
okay, just out of curiosity, so I have the information, and people who are watching and listening, I see posts of member mixers.
Yes.
How can people guess? How can non-members go and see what's going on? What days?
Yeah, so just follow us on the Hispanic Business Association, HBA, or follow me, and then I'm constantly posting it as well. But you guys can feel free to reach out to me or Maria Garcia or the Hispanic Business Association page.
Do they have to be Hispanic?
Not necessarily.
There you go.
Necessarily.
There you go.
But yeah, it's all about the business doesn't necessarily have to be Hispanic, but it's all about servicing and resources. That's what our Hispanic community trying to learn. We helped other members in the HBA, create something to better their business, either CPAs or business license and stuff like that. So it doesn't necessarily have to be that they are Hispanic, the business, but it's to help. The whole message is to help our Hispanic community do better.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. No, that's a good goal, and especially what's happening today.
Yes, and resources is very, very, very crucial right now. So.
Sweet. Well, thank you guys for sticking it out. I hope you guys got some valuable information. I usually don't look at the camera and start talking like this, so I'm trying to make this a thing. So. Thank you for listening. Stay tuned weekly for a new episode of Paso Robles Podcast.
Thank you.